Hello friends and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we're going to be checking out something called Ditto by developer Nitrome. This is a free browser-based puzzle platformer and one that I find to be absolutely fantastic. It is absolutely a pleasure to be able to show you this one. I'm really glad I happened to run into it kind of just by accident. The premise here is we're going to be operating or controlling a little sort of cat-like character who will be walking in front of these reflective planes and has to manipulate his or her shadow self or reflective self to collect all the crystals in a very sort of atmospheric and lonely environment. Sort of feels evocative of something like Ico. And it's also got some shades of perhaps the art styles of Fez, Ridiculous Fishing, a little bit of a gameplay concept perhaps from 8-Bit Night. Also Journey comes to mind, but you know, perhaps a little bit of a stretch in that case. But let's just jump right into things, and I will show you how things go. The really, really cool game, and I'm glad that I happened to run into this one. So we start in a very forlorn setting here, like I mentioned. It seems to be some sort of a cave, and a butterfly settles on my nose and causes me to wake up. So when you look at the ground, you'll notice there's obviously a reflection of me in orange, and it's not quite clear whether or not this reflection of me is actually some sort of ethereal version at first, or whether or not we're looking through perhaps a lake or something like that. Maybe we're just looking at the surface of water. It's kind of hard to say, but it's a really pretty graphical representation. The art style in this game I find to be a bit outstanding. I think the reason I mentioned Journey is probably to do with the red scarf there. But as far as controls go, I know I'm taking forever to get to this first room here, but as far as controls go, it's just really arrow keys. There's almost nothing that you need to figure out with this one. It's just up, down, left, right. I actually mapped it with joy to key to my controller, so that way I can jump with A, because I find that to be a little bit more entertaining and easy to use. But the only move that this character really has that I'm aware of is you can hover in the air by pressing jump again as you float down. So take note, of course, of the fact that when I approach one of these planes, no matter where it is, on the opposite side of that is my reflection. Now that matters that this plane happens to be oriented vertically, as you can see, because it's going to cast my reflection to be on the opposite side of that in that direction. So if this happened to be on the floor, I would be down at the bottom. And the game actually makes really, really inventive use of that concept in the puzzles. Now, it's not just the puzzles that really capture my attention in this game. It's also brilliant graphical design, great sound design, even when the music happens to kick in, as you probably heard in the title screen. Really well done. And there's even really cute details, like the fact that there's little frogs over there, and this plant seems to move when I walk into it. Those particle effects coming off of this reflective surface, all of that stuff is really nice. And things get maybe a little bit more dark, because right now they feel a little bit serene, in my opinion. And this is right here, we're introducing now that we've got both concepts in forms of platforms. We actually will alternate. Wherever there's a tangible surface, that's where our character will stay on. So you'll notice up above us, we've got these platforms that we can step on. Down below, though, you know, the character on the top is going to be just hovering in the air. So that's going to alternate. So you just got to pay attention. Wherever one of ourselves is, everything is fair game. So we don't obviously want to fall in the water here. But we can pretty easily avoid that. So now we're going to jump over to this platform that's going to use to prop us up, and we should be able to just jump right into that crystal as soon as it gets closer. Now there's 128 total crystals. I played this game for about 15 minutes or so while I was getting prepared doing sound check. I found myself engrossed by it very, very, very quickly, and I think there's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to have to go back and try again, because there are actually some scenarios. Oh, and by the way, punishment for death is not particularly severe, but there's a lot of scenarios where if you don't act particularly correctly in the formation of one of the levels, you may find yourself through the exit before you realize that you didn't collect all the collectibles, and that can be a little frustrating when that happens, but it does sort of encourage replay value in a strange way. So I've been able to grab that crystal. So far we're 100% as far as I can tell, and then we'll just use this step to get up to the top of this room. Now, of course, I don't want to play too far into this, because if I do, I'm going to be spoiling some of the more inventive levels. Things do get more interesting as we go, and there are actually a number of gameplay concepts that get mixed up, because right now things are pretty simple. But this is where it's going to teach you, obviously, to use this jump and hover mechanism if you can't. Well, you're not going to be able to make it across this gap, obviously. This is where we end up with just a regular jump, and then it actually gives you a little bit of a tutorial in case you screwed that up. So this crystal is going to move around in a circle as long as we land on it in the right moment. No problems. We are through. Alright, so now things are going to get a little bit more spooky. It seems like we've almost entered some sort of a dungeon area, perhaps. And there will actually be some more phantasmal pursuance chasing us later on. This one's a little bit of a more interesting jumping puzzle. It seems like it would be obvious that you would just sort of cross the path of that crystal, but if you don't do it just right, you're not going to find your way down, and there's spikes on the other side of things, so you can't really mess around too much with it. By the way, in case you're wondering why I keep flubbing the jumps when I go into hover mode, the inertia gets a little bit strange when that happens, so you kind of got to get used to how that all works. It's not really bad or anything, it's just like you got to be aware that when you start to slide through the air, you're kind of going to keep going in that direction more often than you're not. So pay attention to those little details, like these little butterflies that hang out. We've got these mushrooms down below. There's even little bits of particles to represent the dust in the sunlight coming through these windows. And of course, the rays being cast are all quite lovely as well. So really great graphical aesthetic. The background has little tiles, there's bits of rocks and things. All of it's really well realized, and there's great attention to detail. So now we've got some torches to look at, and we're just going to have to hover through this whole scenario in one go. This is sort of reminding me a little bit of like the Mighty Jill off, where Jill can just kind of hang in the air for quite a while, and then there's some puzzles that sort of cater to that play style. And I think that's really neat how that sort of gives you some diversity from one room to the next. Now, things get a little mixed up here. This is where I was mentioning things get dark. You will notice there is a phantasm chasing us of some kind. I'm not really sure what it is. So like a creepy cat head. And I have to watch out for that thing, because that's one-shot kills on me. So I've got to make sure that when I enter the realm of reflections here, that I know where the enemy is and that I can get to it in a safe way and get away from it, I mean. It does actually directly chase after me, so I've got to watch that I don't, like, corner myself, because that can happen. It's going to turn around and keep moving back and forth. Let's see if we can now... Okay, so we're going to end up on the top part, and that will give us a way to just hop off to the edge. And then that's sort of a preview of things to come, in that it's kind of extra creepy there, and then things let up a little bit with the pacing. Then we've got a more relaxed, watery area. And this is, again, just to encourage us to float around. And our shadow self is going to be the one to make it to that doorway. So now we've got this introduction of these kind of weird virtual reality-looking cubes. And I really like how these go together with this rather gothic architecture. Things seem very forlorn and sad, and then we've also got the inclusion of things that sort of seem a bit sci-fi. And I don't always like when those two things come together, but in this case I think it really works. I mean, to be honest, the whole game is rather abstract. I mean, I don't even know exactly what our character's supposed to be, but I just kind of like going with the whole cat theme. It just seems appropriate to me. So that was actually not that hard, but things will get more difficult. In this case, we've got to modulate our descent so we don't get squished by these blocks. And I'm kind of making these look a little bit easier, but on your first descent, when you're still getting, you know, a handle for the controls, it's not quite as easy as maybe it might look. And you do need to find the right times to drop and the right times to hover. And, of course, making sure that you grab all of the crystals on your way down. And, you know, that went fairly smoothly. I'm starting to get tempted to just play through the whole game, but I kind of don't want to do that, because I feel like I would be doing you a disservice by spoiling all the puzzles and the great graphic and level design. So each level that I've gone through so far has been rather spectacular to look at and to play. So in this case, we need to, again, keep in mind the central theme of the game, watching both sides of our reflection. In this case, we've got a doubled reflection, which means we're going to have some more interesting scenarios of how we're going to pursue this goal. So in this case, we can hop along over the top of all of these, and you can see this is the double reflection here, the fact that we're in the middle, we get a reflection on both sides. And then, of course, watching again, because all of a sudden you're sort of lured into just following the path of your main character, but then you realize you want to get that other crystal over at the top. Oh, geez, I went through the door by accident. Well, I guess that's fine. I won't spoil that one for you then. And now we've got a grouping of reflections going in multiple directions. So what we're going to do here is, again, remember that we need to focus on the other character and the fact that there is a block hovering in air. And this tends to be my only big problem, and I actually shouldn't say problem, it's just my own personal issue. Tends to be that I very frequently forget to focus on all of the characters, so I would recommend that you try not to do that if you can. Alright, so there we go. We've made it through that puzzle. Now we're going to be chased again by the little Superman cat head. And we're just going to jump right into it, evidently. but the crystals are just going to reset. It's unfortunate that I missed that one, because as far as I'm aware, I can't just go back and go get it. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a level select, unless maybe when you finish the game there is. I guess there could be. This one requires a careful balance between trying to be quick and trying to be meticulous at the same time. Let's just jump over it. There we go. Because if you linger too long in any one spot, that thing is going to come back for you. You don't really have a lot of spaces where you're totally free from having it be around. So you've got to jump around, be a little bit careful, and let's just get out of there before it chases me down. Ah, okay, this is a really interesting use of space, because again, I sort of forgot which character I needed to focus on, or you kind of need to split your attention between the two, because as you get through this, you're kind of led along by the real quote-unquote crystals, and then you find yourself in a position where you feel like you're at a dead end. Because this way, you know, all of this, you run into a lot of blocks. Over here, you run into real blocks. But then you kind of remember, well, why don't we go over in this direction and see what we can do on this side? And then you actually get stuck on the other side by blocks. So it seems like there's almost no way through. But because this game has some pretty good level design, you realize eventually falling down right here will get you through. I'm not exactly sure why on this side. Oh, you know what? I do know why. Because the reflection stops representing you at that point and lets you fall through, and it just looks like you're falling, but you're actually not. So there we go. So that's how you grab that crystal. Let's do one more, and I'll show you that this actually does change conventions a bit. We've got now some sort of fan-like apparati with some pretty cool-looking little triangles that are going to propel us upward, and this is to give us maybe a bit of a moment, sort of like in Super Meat Boy, when you've got the fans that show up. And you've got to watch where you blow up your, I don't know, I guess the best way to call it is like your skirt or your dress to float up extra high, and then that becomes a more main focal point as we go on further. You know, just adding more conventions to the game. We're not quite done with it yet, but I feel like out of respect to the game, I should probably wrap things up at this point. I absolutely love Ditto. If you couldn't tell, my commentary has been surprisingly, overwhelmingly positive, so I definitely recommend go play it yourself, let yourself figure out these puzzles, go and try and 100% the game if you can. Great graphical style, great sound design, great attention to detail, great puzzles, all of it. Big thumbs up. Go play some Ditto. Link's going to be in the description. Again, it's totally free. Play it right in your browser. You don't even need to download anything. Couldn't really ask for a more accessible experience than that. If you are bothered by the controls, consider getting Joy to Key, map it to your 360 controller if you've got one, or whatever controller you have, really would work just the same. And with that, I suppose I will leave you for another day. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, consider leaving a like. I do very much appreciate any support. I will, of course, be back again for a new episode every single day, so there will be another one tomorrow. If you enjoyed it, consider coming back then. And, of course, consider subscribing as well if you're into finding out about a new indie game every single day. Some of them more bizarre than other ones. This one, I would say, fairly conventional, but I really love the art design to it. And I meant to stop, but I want to keep going because this game's so fun. Anyway, that's going to do it for it another day, guys. Thank you again for watching. I will catch you tomorrow.